Would you consider that more of your identity resides in an athlete or a coach?
Oof, that's such a hard one.
And out the gate, I want to clarify currently.
Currently?
Yeah, you can't say where it started. We can get into that.
So I think that it's like kind of in a transition period at the minute, which is interesting because for the longest time, my only like real conceivable metric of like a way that I can prove myself was as an athlete. And I knew that that would always shift into like what my athletes are capable of and not just what I am capable of. And so it's been shifting towards that. But I would say currently still that last year and this year have easily been my most competitive years across like my entire career. Um, and I would probably say as a result of those that right now my mindset is very much geared towards an athlete or that of an athlete. But I am so aware that the moment the calendar year ends, it's just going to be coach.
So what are the bits, when we're talking about your identity, like whether it's values or ethos, what are the bits that you think reside in each of them separately, that they do exist completely separately?
So you mean stuff that isn't necessarily mutually held between the two?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Because I think it's easy to
That's
say, like, I feel like
hard.
one or the other, but actually a
Yeah.
significant amount of crossover.
There's so much crossover, yeah. Gosh, that's a hard question because the first thing that springs to mind is accountability, and then I'm immediately like, oh well, that's just not true because you can't, like, as a coach, if you're going to progress in any meaningful way, you have to hold yourself accountable to the same degree that you would ask to be held accountable as an athlete, right? Or that you would hold yourself accountable as an athlete.
I thought of one. So I went through the same thing of being like, I think being the athlete has helped create a lot of the beliefs that I bring into coaching.
Yes.
And then it helps you seek out a lot of things you want to see in coaching.
Yeah.
The only one is being selfish.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only principle that I think consistently separates those two things.
Yeah, because there is so much stuff I think, and this segues perfectly into something that like I know we're both very opinionated about, but the degree of selflessness that you have to be a genuine phenom as a coach or something that is exceptional, in other words, is abnormal. Like the amount of things that you probably have to sacrifice that will affect your athletic career is no joke. Like people overlook that all of the time. And like, yes, you can be an athlete and a coach at the same time, but if you're going to be a phenomenal coach, you're probably going to have to give up aspects of your athletic career at some point.
So let's ask you a hard question straight away.
Yeah.
Like, do you think you're doing your best as an athlete by being a coach?
Probably not. And I would honestly say that you're probably not doing your best as a coach by being an athlete. Do you know what I mean? And
That one I can absolutely agree with.
yeah, it's a seasons thing. You know, like there are certain times where you will make certain sacrifices and certain times that you won't make certain sacrifices. Do you know what I mean? And that is that there is an ebb and flow as to what way that you lean. As someone who does both.
I think it should be an ebb and flow. This
Yeah.
is the thing that I've struggled with. Like the last couple of years of being like, there's not been like, okay, this season's going to be just about being a coach. Because even comp recently of being like, okay, I'm gonna like, it's just going to be about me, minus the people I'm flying there with to handle and the people I'm training with every single session. And be like, I completely abandoned everything in principle of what that was going to be. Do you think you're managing to maintain that, of just being like, I'm an athlete when I'm an athlete, I'm a coach when I'm a coach?
Yeah, honestly, I think I've been doing a good job at handling it at the moment. I fully expect that to get significantly harder as time goes on, though. Fully expect that to get harder as time goes on. Just with, like, to the same degree that I know being an athlete is more stressful when you have more competitive or less more competitive years. So when you have less competitive years, or if you're filling out a category, or you're moving up into another category, you'll probably have to sit back for a second, hit some qualifying totals, then you're getting into your more like serious meets. But with athletes, like that happens whenever.
Yeah.
Right. And so as more athletes, as like a roster grows, as a team grows, both in number and in prestige, there's more international competitions, there's more stress on you as a coach to get it right, to be consistent, to do so. I feel in that aspect, like my athlete success, in those instances, you just have to be so focused as a coach, and that's where you will make those sacrifices. And in your own in your own successes, there is a time and a place to be selfish about those things.
I agree with that. The point at which I met you, because you were a coach at that point, to whatever degree we can clarify. That sounds so abrasive.
It's so true.
And you're also an athlete.
Yeah.
But to what degree at that point? Like,
yeah.
So do you think both of those have changed an equal amount, or one more so?
I think it's been that's a hard question to answer for the specific reason that I've grown so much as an athlete and so much as a coach. Probably more so as a coach than as an athlete, to be honest. Like there's so many variables and there's so much nuance to that of like from last year to this year, I went from junior into open. Like I only had one international cap as a junior. I'm now onto my second as an open. Like you could try and weigh it up statistically, but then even at the same time, like with coaching, it's just that this has been the year where like we have 4 going to nationals. We have a couple looking at like trying to get home nations qualifications. Like there's so much stuff where I'm like, I wasn't considering any of my athletes doing this like 2 years ago. This was not a thing. And so it's really, really cool to see literally the living principle of rising tides raise all ships. And that's been such a cool experience to have within the framework of DBD and what you've built. Just like the support network and how much that actually speaks to community and what community genuinely means. Because it's not always like,
well, let's go there.
Sing-songy. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so like, okay, so let's, within the powerlifting space, I would consider community a buzzword. Like people talk about it all the time. Like people say the powerlifting community is great. I don't know what that means because that's an incredibly broad statement of being like the entirety of a sport has a great community. It's not true. So first of all, like what would you define a good community as within powerlifting?
So I think each community holds its own culture. And a culture is made up of a bunch of individuals. And so you'll have teams of powerlifters, right? Be that like federations, be that actual like powerlifting teams and their coaches. But you'll have these different cohorts, and it is the culture of each of those that determines the community, and it is the sum of all of that determines the community as a sport, right? And so it all really, in my opinion, boils down to like the personal level of like, if you actually want to see the community be better, then you need to do better yourself. You know, you have a lot of experience with this in like building DBD and wanting to actually like make a genuine shift within the space. Where did that initially come from for you?
Oh, well played. I think I've always said that like DBD, the principle was like it was going to come from the absence of everything that I experienced when I started, and so I don't believe there's much in life that you can kind of enjoy on your own. I don't think anything has that much value in complete solitude. So I don't think you can come into powerlifting, say that I love all of my training and I love competing and I love like whether it's putting your stuff on social media. I don't think you can enjoy all of that in complete solitude because that would mean if you're just talking social media, it's no audience, you have no followers, no one follows you back. If it's in training, it means you don't train with anyone, no one else even in the gym. And if it's competing, there's no audience and there's no one in the back room and there's no handler. Yeah. And so immediately being like, that is, so people who are like, it's a solo sport and they mean it, I do hate that opinion. I think it's complete nonsense and it can't exist. The sport cannot exist completely alone. But when I came into it, there was the closest experience that I could have had to doing it alone, which was like turning up to my first meet, no coach. I knew no one in powerlifting. I did not have a handler. I did that alone. There was no one in my social media following that was powerlifting because it was 13 years ago, smaller. Don't be wrong, it was still big to whatever scale, but compared to now, it was nothing. And so what if I posted my training? No one cared. And not that it was about like having people blow smoke up your ass, but like there was no one to celebrate with. And even the people around me, like they wanted to value it, but they didn't. It didn't mean anything to them because, you know, you've spoken to like anyone who's not in powerlifting, and you've been like, oh, I did this, and they're like, oh, like what's that comparison to? Or like, that sounds big. I'm like, you have no comprehension.
Are you going to the Olympics? Like,
how's the?
Yeah, exactly.
Like nothing goes above my head. And yeah, so it was more that I just didn't want that for anyone else. But it's the same reason I came into coaching of just like, I didn't want someone to come into this and leave because they felt isolated. And I was like, I don't think that has to be the experience. I just wanted a series of people who just wanted to celebrate together, who appreciated what each of them were going through. And like, DBD did not get born of the intent to create a community. It got born of the fact that I rated it so heavily and so would celebrate collectively every time. So like, when I had 10 athletes, it was so-and-so's just hit this. Like, and by me provoking the point, everyone else knew to say something positive. And then when they wanted to, they would do the thing. And then it was like this, for them, like just the self-fulfilling prophecy of like contribute to the thing becomes what they experience. And it just had to be maintained. And so that comes back to one of the things that you were saying, like talking of culture, is shared ethos and values in essence of being, and this is my question to you, because you were at a point, you were building your own community. And so in joining DBD, and I know you wanted to question, like push at the ethos and values. What were they in your eyes? And then what were they that you wanted to make sure were in a space you were going to be part of?
I think one of the biggest things for me was, and we kind of talked about this within Nova Strong, what was Nova Strong once upon a time, and that was like understanding the cost of greatness. And that'd be something that's a very intimate understanding. And that wasn't necessarily something that I had like pushback with of like, well, you know, DBD doesn't hold that. It was more something that I wanted to make sure was secured within DBD, and that was something that was already held, and that like, I don't need to go and develop that because it's already here. And there's a network of 300 other athletes that also believe that same thing. People greatly underestimate what it actually takes to be in the top 10th percentile, you know, or the top 10% or 5 or 3, or like it gets so much harder the further you go. And there is a disproportional amount of work that you have to do to get into those lower and lower percentages of the top band. And anyone can hold the goal, and you're more than free to have the goal. That's not an issue at all. But it's what that then demands out of you.
Let's be harsh and like actually frame it to objective standards. So if you want to be a beginner, what does it take?
I think baseline, like doing SBD work and maybe eyeing at a competition. Like you can be a powerlifter, train, like I think you can train powerlifting, or rather you can train SBD and not be a powerlifter, or you can train SBD and hate powerlifting. Like it is the competitive aspect of the sport that people can fall out of love with, but people can love squat, bench and deadlift, but you cannot hate squat, bench and deadlift and love being a powerlifter.
Because so in saying to be a powerlifter, a beginner powerlifter, what do you have to do? And being like, you do the sport and you turn up.
Yeah.
Which is the definition of consistency. And we paired that to beginner. Because I know this is something that like we've spoken about, of just like that people talk about, like to be great at this, it just takes consistency. How do you feel about that?
Oh, there's such a great degree of nuance to this. It's the statement at its core is correct. Like, yeah, if to do this, to do anything, you have to be consistent. Like, you have to do the thing in order to do the thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like that's
it's like the most basal potential comment.
100%, yeah.
Like, if you want to do it, do it.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
I think what people kind of miss is that like it kind of gets thrown around, or at least the narrative is, it gets thrown around that the only thing that you need is consistency, and that I fundamentally disagree with. Because depending on what your needs are, that may not be the case. So if you feel that you need whatever the qualifying total is to show up at your federation's nationals, well, it's not just consistency anymore. Like you can do something consistently, and you can do it poorly consistently. And I think that's one of the things that I like to push back on that consistency of like, yes, showing up 100%, but like something that I love from Taylor Atwood, and I think he is a massive advocate for this, of he consistently shows up, but he consistently shows up and does the work to a high standard even when he doesn't want to. And that's something that like I love. Whenever he posted that story, and I forget what exactly he said, I instantly sent that to all my athletes. I was like, this is one of the greats. This is something that we could all learn from. Like every single one of us can learn from that.
I think we've spoken about that principle of like what people do on their worst day.
Yeah.
Like the cliche of we don't judge you by your best, judge you by your worst. And like this is the sort of statement that gets kicked back always, of just being like, if you just show up on your worst day, you're very easy to beat. And like, not even in the terms of like be beat on a competitive level, but like be beat by your potential.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think like usually should or does frustrate most people, of being like, if you just did the bare minimum, and that's what consistency is
Yeah,
the
it's the
bare
bare
minimum.
minimum. Yeah.
Of being like, there's so much more above that that you could have done to control the outcome. So above that, and I'm going to jump straight to the elite. Like, you've already said like of the amount of sacrifice that it can actually take, or the cost of greatness. What are the things that you have to sacrifice, the things you have to maintain to be great?
I want to very briefly mention a conversation that I had with an athlete who was in a great deal of pain, not necessarily physical pain, but a great deal of emotional pain, because he wasn't where he wanted to be. And the thing that he said to me, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 times within the same conversation, was he was just so worried about not becoming what he is potential of. And I think it's that gap. He's someone who I think is like, that's somewhat rare in that he's quite acutely aware of what he's capable of to like quite a significant timeline. And I actually think he's quite accurate on where he thinks he can be. I think in doing that, to him, it has now become the realization that because I am here, there are things that I need to sacrifice, or there are things that I need to do that I am not currently doing. And that's one of the things that's kind of given the cards back into his hand that he can play them.
So there's because obviously you can take this from a lot of different perspectives. There's a lot of people who know they can do better. There's the people who go, okay, I can do better, and so I will. I'm happy to recognize that. And it is Simon Sinek that speaks to the, so like if you can see the goal and you can see the route to the goal, and being like, if you do not want to walk that direction, would be like, you need to free yourself of that desire. There's on the one with Hormozy and referencing him, but saying, oh, it's Mark Manson that spoke with that. But I think one of the things that can be really hard for people, especially when you're like late beginner, intermediate sort of level, is there is a recognition of what being great looks like. And that journey is not small anymore. Like getting to north of beginner, it's fucking easy. Also to clarify, you can swear on this podcast because I have no option. But yeah, getting north of
that is consistency.
Yeah.
Like if you show up consistently, consistency will take you from beginner to intermediate.
Yeah. And then the bit, like as soon as you're at intermediate, you do not look at like early elite, you look at elite. You just look at the top end of the field. And you can see that path. And that path is going to be, okay, well, I think Ed Cohen said this to someone before. They were like, how do I get as strong as you? And it's like, you do the same thing every day for 5 years and then talk to me about it. Yeah. But they see that path and they then see this very elongated journey of being like, well, it's going to take every single day in the gym without sacrifice. You're going to have to be on it with your nutrition. You're going to have to be on it with, you're going to have to get a good coach, not just get a coach. We can come back to what that means later. And you have to do this over an extended period of time. You're going to have to give up some social settings and so on.
Yeah.
And then being like, that's what breaks people, is because they look at top end journey. They look at the Himalayas of these decisions and be like, well, I can't do that. And then they quit. And it's so commonly at the end of beginner that they give up. It's not late intermediates.
Yeah. I think that's one of the hardest things about powerlifting is that so many people just aren't willing to make the jump. And we're seeing more and more people who are doing it, and they're doing it younger and younger. And those are the people who you could obviously debate that like, yeah, it's probably easier for younger people to do it, like sub-juniors to give up certain things because they have, everyone has the same 24 hours. Like I just think that that's crap. Everyone has the same 24 hours, granted, but so many people have so many different responsibilities to fulfill within those 24 hours. And so that drastically changes things. I think the shame of it all is that the space would grow so much more if people were less averse to sacrifice.
Do you think, this is not a thought that is fully formed, but the ease of access to the sport, is immediately, so like people come to the sport, it is so easy to start doing it, right? You can just turn up and you literally can start squatting and benching a deadlift.
Yeah.
And if you are young, you're responding at a decent rate. So like you get to north of beginner fast. And it's, especially in England, it is very much like you do a regional, and if it's nationals, that is the road, that's it. And there are other federations that do allow these different journeys. But like, do you think there's probably a direct relationship to the fact of like ease of entry and then immediate like difficulty of finding future prospect without being the best.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a thing for people who like come into the sport, and be it that they're not in a fantastic system, or they're not in the right mindset for it, or they're just not like some of these freaks of human nature that just drastically respond the moment that they touch a barbell. If you're not in one of those categories, and this is something that like particularly in like the Northern Irish space that people are seeing a lot, and there's been more and more competitions that are like of international level that people can actually aim for. And I think that that's a really good direction that it's pushing in, so that it gives people like the incentive to compete. Do you know what I mean? And the incentive to do better, and the incentive to try harder, rather than it just being like, oh, well, if I want to do this, then I have to have like 500 something dots. Like I have to be a ridiculous standard of lifter. I feel like PA, or maybe it's just the US in general, because there's so many federations. Like there's APF, which is WPC.
Yeah.
There's USAPL. There's definitely like WDFPF out there as well.
Yeah.
There's PA, which obviously I've probably already mentioned. PA.
You did mention the
like there are so many federations within the States that like you want to do powerlifting that looks so different now in all these different federations. There's so many more options available to you. I think in that instance we're seeing a lot of people who like, if you want to hit the 500 dot standard and go Team USA, 100%, here's PA. If you just want to lift as much as possible, like here's squat bars and deadlift bars and suits and whatever, like, you know, you have all these different options that you can cater to the needs, or rather your own desires within the sport.
I'm trying to think of like the reasons that, because as I said, like that early intermediate gives up the fastest, and we can talk to the nth degree about like people's unwillingness to sacrifice, but I do think there's a disproportionate assumption of how much sacrifice it takes to get better.
Yeah.
Not to get the best, right?
Yeah.
Because we're like, someone has already listened to this, I can say with certainty, who's got to this point and been like, man, like fuck off with the having to sacrifice everything. I don't have to, and like you don't, like you absolutely,
You don't.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
I'm asking the question about
don't.
like what it takes to be the best, and
Yeah.
so like let's remove that from the conversation. To be very good at this sport, it doesn't take as much. And so what is it that like stops people perceiving that? Is it, and I think I've internally answered the question as I was doing it, is like the validation typically comes from like the clout and everything within it, right? Like most of powerlifting at the moment. Because if you took the strongest people, I guarantee they have less of a following than the people who just...
That's so true.
Who do well in the
Yeah,
sport.
that's so
like,
true.
And I think most people can name like the top one, but the top five they probably can't name. But they can probably name some of these random lifters with huge followings. And so like, is there a case of like the ease of access and then that being the thing that gets validated, of actually like the graft for something better just does not seem valuable?
Yeah, it's like granted you need to make sacrifice, but it's not like, oh, here goes my whole life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There are people in the space that I have the utmost respect for, and like these are people who, one, are the greats, or are certainly within that upper echelon. So there are probably people in this list that, like as you're saying, people probably can't name just straight off the bat if they're fresher to the sport. Someone who does not fall under that is like Austin Perkins.
Yeah.
Also a father. Jerens Kingamu, also a father. Like that is a massive responsibility outside of just powerlifting. So he hasn't just dedicated his life to it. I'm gonna say him again, Taylor Atwood. Like these people have families, which like the results are evidence of the system. So they have families, so they're probably supporting said family.
Yeah.
Monetarily, probably. Monetarily. It's probably not through powerlifting, which means that they haven't had to sacrifice their job to be a world champion.
Well, yeah, there's context. The only fully paid athlete that I'm aware of is Agatha. She's the only one that lives off of the income of like Sheffield and other bits. She is full-time athlete, right? So like, and that is the only person who, and also love to her, she is like 3 years new. Like no one knew her name 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy, yeah.
And so like, as you say, the people at the top of the sport did not give up their lives for this. They gave more within the terms and conditions they were willing to sign of like what they had to give.
Yeah.
And I think for most people, like what that level of sacrifice actually looks like is that I would sacrifice the standards before anything else, of being like your existing standards of consistency. Like just, you have to abandon that and be like, okay, I'm willing to ask more. And like we get into intent, we get into like the quality of work every time and the time you're willing to give to the gym. It moves from 1 hour to 2. Like moving some of those small margins, I think is enough for most people.
Yeah, and you take that a step further of like if you're taking care of your nutrition, that might be counting, that might be meal planning, that might be whatever. Taking care of your sleep, like
Go even simpler though. Like, what does taking care of nutrition at the lowest level look like?
at the very, very lowest level, getting enough protein. Like, there's so many people. I think there's so many people who like genuinely, gravely underestimate that. Like, there is. It's not a binary system. Like a lot of the time, whenever any human discusses something, it's like, oh, well, it's either this or not.
Yeah.
And it's like that's so false.
Take
Of like,
shell.
oh my gosh, literally, Kedrick was like, oh yeah, so to make the cut to 66s, we just had him stop eating chicken nuggets with his children.
Yeah.
And we made weight fine. Well, we're re-weighing a couple
yeah.
times. That's definitely an exacerbation. But like, if it's just not eating chicken nuggets,
One of the best lifters in the world,
In the
all he
world.
had to do to improve his performance was to stop eating chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
And being like, so nutrition does not have to be.
Just so you know, Usain Bolt ate chicken nuggets for 2 weeks before the Olympics, so I just wanted to add that in, that actually
You know, we're talking
the
like.
fastest man on earth eats chicken nuggets for 2 weeks before he runs. So
He doesn't have to make
we have a
weight.
defense.
Mention women that are mothers.
That's a fact, actually. That's such a fact.
Just as we've broken the fourth wall, that does not change. We're going to continue straight through. I'm not editing any of this out. Of being like, you're not editing it, are you? Everyone shut the fuck up. So not sacrificing literally everything that they have. It's a same thing like nutrition, consistency, all the rest is low barrier to entry. Like it does, you don't have to do a lot for it to improve. And like I said, like it becomes this totalitarian approach to everything of assuming as soon as you go sacrifice, I have to give up everything that I do. And so most people early intermediate have been like just are given that as a route ahead. One of the things we've said numerous times within this is like great coaching. And we've referenced like working with good coaching or great ethos. Actually, before I even ask you anything about great coaching, this sounds like a loaded question. It isn't. But effectively, at the point that you were moving into coaching, like what made you think that we talk about people all the time who they do a comp and then they think they should be a coach? Like what made you think you should be a coach?
I think the one thing for me, I care so much about the space, like those elements of community, and I think it comes down to like people in general, of like a genuine individual thing. Whenever I lived in Romania, I had like a leadership role where within our organization where we would like talk one-to-one with all of the people within the district, and speaking to those people who worked in those areas on a one-to-one level and addressing their personal needs, of being like you can be as open with me as you want because I want to make sure that we're going in the right direction, we're doing the right things, right? That your needs are actually being met rather than what my desires for you, right? And that's those are two very, very different things. I think having that experience really opened it up to me of being like, oh, I wanna do this, and I wanna do this within a framework where people just want to be worked hard and they want to achieve big things and they want to like supersede their goals time and time and time again. I want them to continue to raise their standards. Like that is just that's such an attractive thing to me, like as a core principle. So I think that was one of the biggest things that I was like, yeah, it just seems like it would be the most fulfilling thing that I could do given my experience.
So let's to turn it on its head. Was there a point you thought that maybe it wasn't what you were supposed to do?
Oh my gosh, yeah, so many times. So I remember we were living in my wife and Kat were living in Utah at the time, and I think I must have just picked her up from one of her classes at university, and we pulled back into our little condominium area and we parked in our parking spot, and I turned the car off and I was like, I think I'm gonna quit. I was like 7, 8 months in, I think. I was like, I think I'm gonna quit. It's just nothing's going right. I don't know enough. Like I don't know the things that I thought that I know I need to know, and I don't know where to get that knowledge yet. And that was such a hard thing. There were so many times too where I was like, I don't know what this person needs. You know, and like in some ways to like relinquish that control, I think that's one of the things that I have. Like I know that I've appreciated that when someone has come to me and they've been like, I understand where you're coming from. I just don't know how to help you, but I'll sit here with you. Do you know what I mean? Of being like, I'm not always looking for an answer, you know? And I think in those elements, like, I remember telling Kat, I wasn't looking for an answer. I was like, oh, I think I'm going to quit coaching. And I didn't, like, she could have said yes or no, and my decision would have been made anyway. Obviously, she told me not to. But that wasn't the only time that it happened. Like, I think there was 3 times that it happened. One of them, the most recent one, was November of last year. I was like, gonna quit. Done with this. 3rd time around. I'm done with it this time. And it was so much of it came from a place of like inadequacy. I was like, I'm just not. I'm not the person that I thought I was. You know, I'm not good enough to be there. And let me make it abundantly clear, I still believe that. I've just become comfortable with believing that I'm not enough.
I think we've both recently discussed being a failure.
Yeah.
Yeah, of like being comfortable. Like my ambition, my goals are so high that I have to accept. I live to accept that I am constantly going to be a failure of those ambitions.
Yeah.
The thing you've just described, does that not have like an almost direct parallel to what we're talking about late beginners, early intermediates? The same experience being like
100%.
you looked as an early coach and went, to be great, these are the things demanded of me. I'm not there, so I should stop.
Yeah.
Exact same process.
100%. And this is the thing, is like it still comes into that it's not an all or nothing. Of like, you can be a marginally better coach. Like I could be a marginally better coach next week. I could be a marginally better coach within a month. Do you know what I mean? And it's the exact same with an athlete. Of like, I'm not asking you to go from late beginner to international elite. I'm not asking you to do that in a week. Do you know what I mean?
Within that, then what is the ambition as a coach? Like, the ambition, and then I'm also in pair can ask you like your definition of success as a coach. So I'd love if we disagreed with something soon.
I think we probably will here.
Yes.
I'm
so ready to jump on this.
It's like, I'll kill you. The definition of success is inherently meeting people where they're at and giving them the thing that they continually want and helping them to get there. Right? That, to me, like the attempt to do that and the display of care consistently over an extended period of time is the degree of success. The ambition is that takes people to as far as their ambitions will go, right? And so it's very much dependent on like, I love and work really well with people who have huge ambitions. I think I'm like, okay, and I love this, is sometimes you have to have the conversation with people of like, okay, let's bring it back a couple steps. Like, before we do Sheffield, what do we need to know? You know, what do we need to do before we get to Sheffield? Okay, what do we need to do to get to there? Do you know what I mean? And so I do think that there's a great deal of direction that is given to those people. And I think that kind of, like, you have to, it's that phrase, who dares wins. You know, if you never have the ambition, I don't know if you'll get there.
Where am I disagreeing?
I think one of the biggest things...
Just checking in, being like,
in.
Wait, what?
I think one of the biggest things is like that the ambition for me as a coach is to some degree tied to like the number of international elite athletes that I have.
So there's actually
I don't think that's quantifiable, to be fair.
Well, the number of international elite athletes.
But as in I don't have a number. It's just more like...
Right. Yeah. So because 2 questions within it. Questions were the things I would push back on is you said things that they want versus my terminology is always things that they need. So it'd be like, do you think you're a better coach because you give people what they want, or you think you did better by them of what they needed?
Oh, I think sometimes to get people to where they want, you have to give them what they need. Do you know what I mean? Of like those are to some degree linked. I'm not a parent, but I assume it's much like parenting, where
and there's
wants and needs are so different.
Before you, it's a Daniel Sloss quote from a stand-up comedy where he says, "But I don't have children, but as a white middle-class man, I do what my people do, which is speak on things that are around." As you said, I don't have children, but I can only.
No.
But the same principle, like that they think they want X, like I want sweets, I want this, or like I want this toy, and then being like, instead, like I think what you need.
Yeah, that's I guess that's very true. I mean,
there's a difficult line of this, right?
It's hard too, because I think from the very, very beginning of the episode, like I've been talking about how, for me, a large portion of my experience has been proving myself as an athlete, and that in turn can segue into me establishing my position as a coach. I know for me, there are things that I want of my athletic career that I know in some way, shape, or form I will need later down the line, right? And it's more like I want this thing, and I know that that goal is aligned to the thing that I need, and so that's why wants and needs, provided that those are aligned, can to a degree, be interchangeable terms, right?
Because I think it's fair to give, actually one of our recent coaches call, I think Alice, gave an example of what a want was that was valid versus what a need was, right? And this was on feedback. So, and also I should just like put a pin in that for a second to say, I do not have the arrogance to say that I always know what someone needs. But there are moments you have an inclination to be like, I think right now.
Yeah.
And so like her example on the want was like, I'd given her feedback and my focus was like, here's the things we need to fix. And she was like, there was nothing positive. My brain, I do remember this conversation, by the way, and now she will hear this. My brain went, well, yeah, it was ugly as shit. And like in hindsight, I can see how my brain was fighting a battle. And she said like, I didn't like the feedback. I would like I want this means.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, having this battle of being like, do you want that? Or do you need to be told? Because otherwise this won't change. She was right, I was wrong. Like I thought she needed the criticism. And that's an occasion where it's the other way around. Then the need is, like a good example, as you say, someone goes, I have this ambition, I want to be at Sheffield. And you go, I need to tell you that cannot happen with the way you work. Right now.
Yeah.
Like your inputs do not match those outputs whatsoever. And that's actually one of the things I wrote. Like there was something you said that Kat disagreed with. Of results and inputs. What was that?
I posted a reel that said, if you didn't get what you wanted, you didn't do enough.
Do you stand by what you said? Because bear in mind, I have Kat in my peripheral.
Yeah.
And I have
And you
watched
can
her-
see her facial expression, and I can't.
I have watched her nod many times.
And now she's going to shake.
I'm waiting for a shake.
I think I do. And granted, this is to a great degree from my own personal experience, right? But there are two kind of approaches to, I suppose, life in a really big degree. And this was seen quite a lot in the Modern Wisdom podcast when Alex Hormozy came on, and he is such a logician.
Oh, that's such a good term. Is that a real thing?
A logician?
I've never heard that said before.
No idea. I've just made up a word.
We're fucking keeping it.
I've just made up a word, but he is so logical with everything that he does, and it's never. And their argument was, what holds more value, the how or the why, right? And Chris very much comes from like he finds soul searching to be such a deeply motivating thing for him, and that intrinsically motivates a lot of the decisions that he makes and a lot of the how or the methodology of what he does. Alex, on the other hand, is like, I don't care why I have to do it. I just know if I am going to enact a behavioral change, I have to change my behavior.
So there is, so the way he framed it was that this sort out why is just mental masturbation. It's an excuse to procrastinate for why you won't make the change in the first place. And I viscerally agreed, because when Chris was saying it, he was talking about space between relationships and saying like, you need the space so that you can figure out what the reason was and so on.
Yeah.
And my immediate belief was, have you ever met a person? Have you ever known someone within 6 months of relationship to go, oh my God, it was me? No, it takes them like 5 years and formal relationships. And then I heard someone say a phrase, and this is why, because one of the reasons I think Kat might have disagreed with you, and one of the reasons I initially thought I would disagree with the opinion, was like coming from psychology of being like, there are underlying things we make decisions on consistently.
Yeah.
And so like whatever it is about being crazy is like doing the same thing.
Oh, the
different
definition
result.
of insanity is to do the same
Someone
thing,
used this example, and I was like, oh, that's crazy, of being like, if I gave you a glass of piss and then added sugar, it doesn't matter how much sugar I add, it's still a glass of piss. And then like such a really aggressive way of describing it, which is why I like it.
Yeah.
But in principle of being like, maybe the why does matter, of being like, if you do not know, you can only keep putting so much sugar on top. I got a nod from Kat. I clocked it.
Approval.
But it's a really difficult one, because I side with Alex, and yet there are those, and this is always really important, especially for anyone who disagrees with a lot of what we said, is if you disagree with a very tiny anecdotal principle, you do not disagree with the point, you just want to argue.
Yeah,
So, like-
yeah. And I think that's a big part of where that has come from for me, and that specific point in that specific reel was that I have such a big motivation to push athletes in the direction of you genuinely have more control than you think. You genuinely do. Because I don't think, like, any of the performances that I've had where I can go, I haven't done everything that I could have, is me looking in retrospect and seeing the holes that I left or the stones that I left unturned. And I just don't think that's a bad thing. You know, you could be like, granted, if you're someone who is incredibly harsh on yourself, could potentially be a toxic thing, right?
Yeah.
But if you are going into it like a logician, or you're going into it with logic and saying, yeah, I probably could have taken a bit more control of that or a bit more stewardship of that from earlier on.
So this is where I completely agree, right? It's like, I think both of us hold this like aggressive accountability because you can tell me all the reasons that are out of my control. I have no interest in those, and I would only like to focus on what is in my control. And I think the other side of it is like acknowledging. It's like acknowledging the cards you're dealt, whilst being like, but how are you going to play them?
Yeah.
Because people win poker on shit hands all the time. And I do think there are you can have a terrible performance. Take me. A bad performance of being like, there are reasons that were out of my control, whether it was the sleep or whatever it was. And the reffing, I need to say it. Okay, and then I can move forward. But there were so many things in my control that I legitimately don't care. Like Spencer, who is also in the room, the conversation I had with him afterwards was like, I'm not angry about there was a thing with reffing, whatever. I do not hold any anger towards the reffing, nor do I to the other athletes that I stayed up for, because I was like, no matter what, I wasn't strong enough. Like, I did not do everything in prep. The quality of my bench work in training, okay, injury happened, but the quality of my bench is my fault. It is not the extended pause I got. There's no stability on most of my benches. That is on me. And the depth being like, oh, they were slightly inconsistent. Like, but I didn't squat to depth enough times to reinforce it. And I do think like I would always rather side to the things that you can control. You have an absolute choice over so many things. And I'm willing to acknowledge there are many things you have no choice over.
Yeah.
But then what is the point of focusing on those things?
On those things, yeah.
And I think that's like, to say they're the excuse that people want to hold on to, of being like, they are an excuse unless you because you let them be the reason you don't do the thing. When you look at all of the things you can control, if you are willing to ignore the things you can control, now it's an excuse.
Yes.
If it's like a reason things are harder, that's a reason. That's valid, completely fair. If it's the excuse to reject everything else, then I have a problem.
Yeah, I think you can get so hard line about this. You can get very, very hard line about this. In that, like, if you see anyone on IPF Worlds or at Sheffield, if you had a poor performance, no one really cares that you had a bad day. Do you know what I mean? Or like, people aren't coming to Sheffield to hear that these people have had really, really stressful lives. Like, I'm sorry, there's so much of that people don't. The majority of people, vast majority even of people, just don't care about. You know, they come to see the performance. Granted, like Sheffield, there's 12 of each category. Do you know what I mean? So there's definitely people who are coming specifically to see those people because that is their favorite lifter, and those people will have a degree of care. But I genuinely do think that there is so much that, should it be without your control, should it be something that you care about?
So, on the coaches call we just did, there was a bit where we were talking about communication things, and I was painted to be a complete hard ass. and you were thrown under the umbrella.
I was, yeah.
Thank God I listened to this entire thing so I could catch up with it, because I wasn't on that one. And we probably just painted both of ourselves to be somewhat harsh on the same principle.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is buffer it, right? Because we spoke about ethos and values and things that are really important to our coaching. So it's the meet the person where they are, right? The definition we consistently use is athlete first. So on two things. One is, what does athlete first actually mean to you? And then if I can even wait, let's just start with that.
You saw me close my eyes and give like a exasperated expression. You were like, oh no, hold on.
And before you do, the one thing I want to say is that if you listen to us talk about any of these things and it's like we seem very emotive and that we believe in these things, is just like, poke holes in it if you can, and then you can hold me to the standard of thinking I'm an arse. Of being like, if it doesn't reside in everything that I do, fair enough.
Yeah.
But like, it's not things said lightly. Like, most of these things have been questioned and poked at and like made sure we've like stand by these with some resolve for reason.
Yeah.
So athlete first.
Gosh, where do you start with that? We've kind of talked about this as far as like the level of sacrifice that you're willing to go into as a coach. Um, you know, if you genuinely believe in athlete first and you have an international roster, are you going to stay up to the small hours of the morning to remote handle? Are you going to be there? Or are you just going to, like, obviously, you're going to have an in-person handler that they're just offload everything to them? Are you going to want to be remote handling? Are you going to want to support them from afar? Like, to what degree do you actually believe in athlete first? And I think that varies. You know, I think that there's like a degree of buy-in that you have to have with that. But I think bare minimum of athlete first is having a protocol that you consistently stick to 100% of the time. Otherwise, you cannot say that you believe in that thing. Who was it? Oh, it's Hormozy who said to his beliefs, I think it was Hormozy actually, now that I'm thinking about it, but his beliefs were something that he's willing to die for, otherwise he doesn't believe in it.
It probably is him. This is something I wholeheartedly agree with. So Hormozy is our modern day example of something that I had when I was 18. Do you know Rob Bailey?
Rob Bailey?
Yeah.
No.
So Dana Lynn Bailey, as people frequently know from Flag Nor Fail, she was like this bodybuilder. The husband is the one that I cared about. And he made music for Lifters, and you've heard the music. It's in like Southpaw and numerous other films, but it became Lifters music. And like he created my character inadvertently. I met him once. It was beautiful. I cried. He did not understand what was going on. He was just signing. He was just signing. He was there for her, so holding posters for her to sign. And I was like, I need to meet you. And he's like, there's no queue for me.
Yeah.
But there was a line in one of his songs that was like, why is no one willing to die for anything anymore? And I remember being like frustrated at the world for a really long time of being like I really want to be a coach. And I was like, but you take so much time off. You don't reply. Like I have cried with lifters and like the, you know, like when you see them compete, you lose your shit and then you're like, oh, I need a breather.
Yeah.
Like it's not like a nice thing for Instagram. It's a, no, I am so overly committed to this. It means so much. And the die for anything belief, I just think it's like, this is a quote from the Joker, which is like, he said something like, would you die for me? Actually, no, would you live for me? And that's the thing for coaching for me of like, it's not something I would die for. It's something I am devoting my life to.
Yeah.
And so the devoting your life, and like, I'll speak on it on your behalf, because that's what my people do, okay, so you're coaching, like, the stayed up till the early hours of the morning. I know that you did because you spoke about it on one of the calls. Yeah. The time you're willing to give to it and go above and beyond, and like even the idea of setting boundaries of times. It depends on the nation they're in still.
Yeah.
The check-ins, never late. Programs always bespoke. Like everything at the bare minimum, and also the above and beyond for what their experience was going to be. Even the degree to which you wanted to question me of what DVD was to even consider that opportunity. Like we discussed it at significant length that it had such value to be like, these guys matter so much to me. I'm just throwing them into it of an opportunity to make money.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to do something better for my athlete.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember whenever we went through the process of me joining DVD, and I am such a like, once I make a decision that I'm like, okay, I want to do something, I'm like, burn the boats. And that is straight from Gavin Aiden, full credit.
Yeah.
Of like, burn the boats, there's no other option. And that's very much what coaching became for me before Nova Strong died. I was like, this is it. This is the thing of like, if I am actually going to fulfill this to the degree that I know that I want to, I have to burn the boats. I have to give myself no other option. I really do think, and you touched on this very briefly, but like the bare minimum within coaching. I really, truly, wholeheartedly believe that the standard for coaching at the moment, I'm gonna say across the board, is so low. I just think it is. I really do. I think it is so low. I think there are very few people who are willing to like. You can do half a job and have a full smile on your face if you are admittedly a part-timer. Like if you have a part-time job in any other field and you show up part-time, you can be happy with part-time pay. You can be happy with part-time results. But to market yourself as someone who is full-time or has an integral role in shifting that space would be false, because you're just a part-timer, right? I think the exact same thing of coaching. Of like, if you're just a hobbyist coach or you're just a part-timer, there is a place for you to exist. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I think less of you should exist. I think more people care about this more than they think. They're just same thing with people going from beginner to or late beginner to intermediate or early elite. They're too scared to take the jump. You know, the amount of people that have said to me like, "Oh, it's so great that you're doing what you're doing, but I couldn't support this, and not everyone can support this doing it full time." Do you know what I mean? Not everyone can afford. I think the exact phrase that I've been told is not everyone can afford to do this full time. I'm like, what do you mean by that? Because in order to do something and to excel at it and be able to afford to do it full time, you have to just do it full time. Like you have to burn the boats and give yourself no other
At
option.
the beginning of this, you could not afford to be a full-time coach, which is why you put the time while being a full-time coach to be one, so that you had the income because you were doing a better job to be able to be a full-time.
That's why I nearly quit 3 times, is because I couldn't afford to be a full-time coach. I actually could not afford that. Like bear in mind, I am 23 years old. I'm married. So I'm married young. I have a wife to support and we are entirely financially by ourselves. Being a powerlifting coach probably is not the most attractive thing for my wife to be like.
I'll be honest, she seems like a fan.
She is, I know, and deeply I know she is, and that's why I married her. But like, she could have had the desire to have literally anyone else with any other career that has like an appearance of more stability.
Stability is the word I was going to
Right,
use.
and it is stability. It absolutely
I'll
is.
say that the first thing when my my partners found out that I do powerlifting coaching, A, reference of PT real fast, and B, when she saw my follower was like, "Are you some sort like you sort of famous thing?" And like joking, being like, "It's not a job taken that seriously out the gate." Like obviously there's developed respect for it. Within talking about coaching, we're talking like the beliefs of, let's say, beginner coaches rather than saying shit ones. There's a phrase that I wanted to get your opinion on. The trust the process. How do you feel about that?
Everyone in my gym knows that I have an abundant and widespread hate for that comment. I hate it so much.
Sometimes it's weird that we've not known each other longer to share the same beliefs of being like.
I've been alone in this for so long.
Like I have, like Rachel tell you, for as long as she's known me and for as long as I've ever coached, I just like the dumbest comment I've ever heard. That's like a builder turning up at your house and being like no drawings, nothing. Trust me, I'll sort it out.
Trust me,
And
I
be
got
like,
you.
"Yeah, but what are we making? Trust me, I got it."
Trust me, yeah.
What?
Literally source, trust me, bro. It's, yeah.
Definition of rogue trader exists in coaching.
It terrifies me when people say that. It terrifies me when coaches say that in particular. Really terrifies me when coaches say that in
Why?
particular. I am a avid advocate for prove the process, earn the process. Like, you can't walk blindly into something and just expect it all to work out. Like, you have to work and do the things that are requisite to prove to yourself, if no one else, that it works. Because if you don't do that, you can never build the trust. Of like, if you had a child, I'm not a parent, but if you had a child, would you just trust any random ass individual with your child? Probably not, right? And so if it's something that you actually really, really genuinely care about, like if your athletic progression is something that you genuinely hold dear, you will not just trust anyone or any process.
There's an element of this I push back on the sense of, okay, so devil's advocate, what's the reply you're going to get? And the reply is going to be, but I do inherently trust my coach, and so on. And I'm like, let's remove the principle of trust being in the sense that you do not know the intent behind the thing, the value behind the thing, right? Whether or not they've put the time in and so on. Remove that as the concern. The concern should instead be if the trust the process is a significant lack of accountability of understanding the process. Yeah. And I will tell you, I have never coached well enough when you don't understand the process. Like, there's no athlete I've ever worked with who's gone, I'll just follow the program. I'm like, you need to know what I'm trying to achieve here. Like, I can't give you a tempo squat and then you go into your regular squats and still dive bomb it and not understand what the process was for. And the trust the process annoys me on two fronts. One, shit athletes. Two, shit coaches. I should probably caveat with some sort of definition, but I won't. I'm just being like, to be in either of those fields, the process has no value without understanding or proof. So just to share how much I despise the the idea that anyone should just innately be trusted. There's no coach that has proven their salts to the degree that I'd be like, I'd still immediately trust you with no information. with no
Yeah,
explanation.
that was actually the thing that whenever you said, like, could probably be misconstrued of, like, well, it's under the assumption that you trust your coach, and I'm like, yeah, but that is also something that is earned. Like, like, a coach earns your trust. I've always, and that's a two-way street. Like, you earn their trust, they earn your trust. I've always, always, always said that, like, I am not first a coach. I am first privileged with your trust. I am then a coach.
Oh, I love that.
Because you, as a baseline, like, we're all human beings. So if this is something that you genuinely hold dear, I will take this very, very seriously. And the fact that you're trusting someone to do so is a reflection of a human on human interaction, not an athlete on coach interaction.
You know what you're saying about the measure of success of coaching? I think a big thing I would measure myself by is the percentage of my athletes like that trust is means so much significantly more. Like that, so forget the ambition, whatever they achieve, of being like, there are some of the people that I coach, this is not negative in any way, where powerlifting doesn't mean as much. Like it's a hobby that they want to pursue and they can do well in. Then there are people like yourself, right? And not supposed to smoke, but I know what powerlifting means to the success of your career and the future prospects, whatever. I won't get into the details. But what that means to you of being like, the weight of that is the thing I look for rather than like the burden. It's just being like, that is exactly what I want this job to be. Of being like, the people that work with me are like, this means the world. I'm like, I will do my best. And like, this is what my best will be. But like, I think that might weigh into my measure of success that I had not considered until now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, it's a real, because I know, like, there are people who I've onboarded at some point or have come into the team and they're like, there was actually a girl recently who I brought on and she's going to a national championship and she's like, I am going to bug you a lot within these first few weeks. And I was like, that's your job right now. Like, this means a lot to you and know how much this means to you going into this for her own personal reasons. And that was one of the biggest things, was the degree of trust that she gave me. I felt beyond honored by and felt so respected actually within that trust of like, it's such a, you're so privileged to have someone's trust. You're so privileged to have someone's trust. And particularly when it comes from like an online presence or someone who doesn't actually like know you on a very deep and personal level, I think that's such a huge thing of they've come to you and they've been like, I trust the thing that you stand for. I trust your ethos and I trust you as an individual.
So within that, we've spoken about what powerlifting means to people and why that carries so much weight to us. Most of this, I haven't actually asked you much about, like, you. Why does powerlifting mean so much to you?
Oh my gosh, am I going to do this?
Don't summarize.
Bet. I guess this isn't the place to summarize. So,
Depends if I get told we've got a different time limit.
yeah, fact.
You get halfway and
So,
I'm like, nah,
no, we'll wrap this up. So, whenever I first started, I had always had like this really, really deep desire to just be good at anything. And I had tried a lot of things. A lot of people don't know that I did music theatre for 10 years and was on a stage for 10 years.
I'm a little disappointed that we went here instead of like
I know.
more musical theatre. I would pay to see it now.
I know you would. But I did that for such a long time and I just wasn't, I was good at it, but I wasn't that bought in. Looking back on it, like I loved it so much, don't get me wrong. I just don't think I was bought in and I don't think it scratched the itch that it needed to. And I think that stems from like, I could not express aggression in theatre. I couldn't reliably express aggression in theatre. Like I loved playing a villain. And that wasn't because like I want to be perceived as a bad person. It was because like nothing makes a story like a good villain. Like a good villain makes or breaks a story. Because if your villain's wet, you're like, okay, you're not that much of a threat.
Name any phenomenal film, whether it's like a comic book character, whatever, being like, if the villain sucks, the film's not great.
Exactly. And so I think that's a huge thing. Now, this, I'm probably gonna get baited, like clipped. This will get clipped, and I'll get baited for it. But I genuinely believe that violence is the answer quite a lot of the time. And what I do not mean is that in discussion with another human being, that violence is the answer. But I do believe that if you have a goal, you do sometimes need to be violent for a consistent period of time.
So you're saying this is going to get clipped, and then people will be like, I can feel the people in the room
Oh,
also
I know.
going like, oh, and I'm like, I so violently agree with you. And they're like, let's double down because I
Yeah.
can feel the room being like, hold the fucking.
So the reason,
I can
and
feel
I
it.
know Kat disagree. I know my wife disagrees with me on this to some degree, right? And the reason that I say this is because there have been very, very few things. Oh, slight tangent here. I forget who said it, and I'm so sorry that I forget who said it. But someone said, "People will never understand the violence that it took to be this calm."
I'll figure it out in a minute. Google, and we'll throw it back in.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just
Pull
take
that
the quote
up.
again?
What was the quote again?
People will not understand the violence that it took to become this calm.
Okay.
I think that's incredible, because there is so much struggle that people have that at some point you have to be. You can call it, like, there's so many synonyms that you could bring to this, right? I like to use the word violence because to me that embodies the very thing that I like to perceive it as, and that it helps me actually achieve the thing. You could use ruthless, you could use dedication, you could use consistency, but
I'm gonna push back and say you can't.
I
agree with the first three.
Yeah, but
Consistency, I'm
consistency
like,
is the
does
one
not.
where, like,
Yeah.
I think violence can be bursts, but it's the implication of achieving your goals is that you have to be violent on it for a extended period of time. There is so much of my training, like, we've strayed a little bit from the point here.
We'll come back, Ari.
We will come back.
We have
And
roughly 15 minutes.
We'll bring it back here now. When my dad passed, so my dad passed to cancer 7 days before junior nationals. That took an incredible amount of violence on my end to even show up. And it's not violence of, like, I was punching steering wheels or I was angry at other people. It wasn't anything to do with that. It was violence of, like, I am going to make a decision and I'm going to fulfill it. Like, I will see this through. And I went to Open Nationals, and there was another competitor who was there, who at the time won Mapalo, who I respect to the nth degree. And he recently, maybe 3 weeks ago, sent me a message and said, every one of us had no idea how you got there. Of, like, what on earth, like, this guy should not be here. So many, like, a lot of people heard the news a week before and they went, he's out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not showing up. There's no way. And I came into the sport to find myself, to find something that I could find fulfilling, that I could feel a sense of achievement in, that I could consistently work towards an end goal that was far beyond my current reach, and that in that I would find purpose. I stayed to let my father's legacy live on. I have a note in my phone that goes into depth about the purpose of why I'm here in the sport. And a huge part of it is that anything I earn, I dedicate to my father. And no one else can, like, maybe no one else knows that, but I'll know. And I believe that he'll know. And my mum will know. And my wife will know. And my kids will know when I have those. I'm not a parent, but my kids will have those. And I just really hope that people get to know my dad through me. And that people get to know how much he supported me through the things that I'm able to achieve. And how I just how much family can mean. And how much a support system means, and how much someone that you trust means. People will see it every now and again in my lifts, in my training videos, or when I'm in the gym, they'll see it. But, like, I have frequently cried before a really major lift. Frequently, and that's never happened before my dad passed. And it's because I have a really distinct memory of going home after every single training session and showing my dad my lifts, and I would sit on the sofa with him, and I was like, "Oh, this is what I did here," and he's like, he took so much interest in it, and I loved that, and he was always so supportive of it. And I miss that. I really miss that. I miss that really deeply, of having that relationship with my dad. And I think it's just been a case of the violence that I will show and will show consistently over an extended period of time will reap achievement that I will be able to dedicate to my father's legacy. And I don't care if anyone knows about it, because I will. And I'll make sure to the best of my ability that they do know about it. But I will always know why I'm here and why I stay and why I refuse to leave. Stuart Locke said, "You can't kill what refuses to die." I love that. And there's violence in that. You know, there is violence in being stalwart. There's violence in staying in the sport. A lot of people get injured, and you have to be violent whenever you're injured to stay. Because you have to be so violently dedicated to this that you're not just easily swayed by an injury or what someone said to you sometime, or because someone perceives you as a tryhard. Like, I would far rather be seen as violent and stay and be seen as like unreasonable but still be here.
Because I just agree. I think we'll call it that. Nice.